You're tuning into the deep dive
Yeah.
because you want to get smart fast. Maybe you're facing a challenge where things really need to change.
Or maybe you're just curious about, why we tick the way we do.
Exactly. Or maybe you just want the knowledge without, like, drowning in research papers for hours.
Well, whatever the reason, you're definitely in the right place today.
Because today, we're tackling something huge,
Yeah.
making changes that actually stick.
Yeah, and it's so easy to think, oh, if change isn't happening, it's just stubbornness, right?
Yeah.
Or laziness.
Either in ourselves or, other people.
Uh-huh.
But what if the real roadblocks are actually deeper? More about how our minds are wired or the situations we find ourselves in.
Precisely. Because understanding the fundamentals of how we approach change, that can be a game changer in itself.
Okay.
So we're going to explore a really powerful framework today. It looks at 3 key things. Directing our rational side, let's call it the writer.
Okay, the rider.
Motivating our emotional side, the elephant.
The elephant, got it.
And crucially, shaping the environment around us, that's the path.
Rider, elephant path. Interesting.
Yeah, and understanding how these 3 sort of interact, it can make change feel less like this, massive uphill struggle and more like something you can actually navigate.
And our guide for this is Chip and Dan Heath's book, Switch.
Yeah.
A fantastic read.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So think of this deep dive as like your express lane to the core wisdom in that book. We're pulling out the key ideas, the actionable stuff.
The aha
Yeah.
moments and the practical tools people are looking for.
Exactly. Our mission today, just to give everyone a clear, engaging grip on what it really takes to make change happen successfully.
All right, let's do it. Where do we start?
Well, let's jump right into what the Heaths call the 3 surprises about change. And the first one, it really flips things on their head.
Oh, yeah.
Often what looks like a people problem is actually a situation problem.
Okay, wait. That sounds counterintuitive. Our first instinct is always the person, isn't it? Someone's not performing, must be lazy, team's not clicking, personality clash.
Right. But the Sheaths argue we often overlook the power of the environment. Take their popcorn study example.
Oh, I remember this one. The movie theater popcorn.
That's the one. People given those giant, ridiculously large buckets ate 53% more popcorn than people with medium buckets.
Wow. 53%.
Yeah. And it wasn't because they were suddenly hungrier.
Yeah.
It was the bucket, the situation, the sheer availability, the visual cue. It drove the behavior.
So the takeaway is, look at the context first, before blaming the individual.
Exactly. Before pointing fingers, analyze the situation they're actually in. It might be shaping their actions way more than we think.
That's a big one. Okay, surprise number 1?
Yeah.
It might be the situation. What's surprise number 2?
The second surprise is this. What looks like laziness is often just exhaustion.
Exhaustion, mental exhaustion.
Yes. And this brings us to that core idea of the brain having 2 systems. There's the emotional side, the Heaths call it the elephant. Big, powerful, operates on feeling.
Right, the gut instinct, the drive.
Exactly. And then there's the rational side, the writer. Sitting atop the elephant, holding the reins, trying to steer. The planner, the analyzer.
That's Jonathan Haidt's analogy, isn't it? It's such a useful image.
It really is. And here's the critical part. The writer's ability to exert self-control, to steer that elephant, it's like a muscle. It gets tired. It's a limited resource.
Okay.
So when we're pushing for big changes, the writer is constantly wrestling with the elephant, trying to keep it on the new path, resisting old habits. And that takes energy, mental energy.
Also, it's like decision fatigue or ego depletion, as psychologists sometimes call it.
Precisely. The writer gets worn out. So what might seem like someone just being lazy or unwilling, it could actually be that their rational control center is just, depleted, fried.
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Starting a new diet or exercise plan, the first few days, you're all in, the writer's strong. But after a while...
the willpower just seems to evaporate, right?
Yeah. It's not that I suddenly don't want the goal anymore. It's just I don't have the mental strength left to fight the urge for the comfy old routine.
That's writer exhaustion. So, surprise 1, situation, not people. Surprise 2, exhaustion, not laziness.
Okay, what's the third surprise about change?
The third one is that what often looks like resistance is actually just a lack of clarity.
Lack of clarity, meaning people don't understand what they're supposed to do.
Exactly. Change requires people to act differently.
Okay.
Right. But if the writer, our rational planner, doesn't have a clear, unambiguous destination and, maybe more importantly, clear steps to get there,
Then the elephant just keeps going where it's always gone, the path of least resistance.
you got it. The elephant loves routine. It loves the familiar. If the writer says, go,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere better, but doesn't provide a map, the elephant's just going to stick to the old trails.
So it's not necessarily active defiance, like I refuse to change. It's more like I don't actually know how you want me to change, specifically.
Precisely. They need crystal clear direction. Ambiguity is the writer's enemy and, by default, the elephant's best friend for staying put.
Okay, those three surprises are really illuminating. Situation problems, not people problems. Exhaustion, not laziness. Lack of clarity, not resistance.
And understanding those really sets the stage perfectly for the Heath's framework for actually making change happen.
Which brings us back to the rider, the elephant, and the path.
Yep. The core idea is you need to tackle all three. You need to direct the rider, motivate the elephant, and shape the path.
All right, let's break that down. How do we direct the rider? How do we give that rational brain the clarity it needs and stop it from just, spinning its wheels in analysis paralysis?
Well, a key strategy that Heath's highlight is finding the bright spots.
Bright spots, what are those?
They're basically exceptions, instances where the change you want is already happening, even if it's just in small pockets or occasionally, instead of obsessing over why things are broken.
You look for where things are working.
Exactly. What's working well, and how can we do more of that? The solution, or parts of it, often already exists somewhere in the system. You just have to find it.
I love that. It's such a positive, solution-focused approach rather than just problem solving. How do you uncover them?
They suggest asking some really specific questions. Two great ones are the miracle question, which is basically, imagine you woke up tomorrow and the problem was magically gone. What's the very first small sign you'd see that would tell you things are better?
Huh. That forces you to think about concrete outcomes.
Right. And the other is the exception question. Think about a time recently, even just for a moment, when this problem wasn't happening or wasn't as bad. What was different then? What were you doing?
So both questions shift the focus away from the problem itself and towards actual, tangible examples of success, however small.
Precisely. It helps the writer bypass that tendency to just analyze what's wrong. And that tendency is real, by the way.
What do you mean?
Well, research actually shows we have more words in the English language for negative emotions than positive ones. Our brains are kind of wired for a negativity bias.
So the writer naturally gets stuck looking at problems.
Often, yeah. So finding bright spots is an active strategy to counteract that. And once you have found some bright spots, the next step is crucial for directing the writer. You need to script the critical moves.
Script the critical moves, sound specific, like really break it down.
Exactly. Remember, ambiguity is the enemy.
Right.
Vague goals like be healthier or improve teamwork paralyze the writer. The elephant just shrugs.
Right. Too much room for interpretation or just feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. So you need to translate that big goal into a few very specific, concrete behaviors. Not improve customer service, but...
Every time a customer calls with X problem, follow these 3 specific steps. Something like that.
Perfect. It tells the writer exactly what to do. No guesswork. This removes the decision fatigue.
Which ties into that other point they made about choice overload, right? The jam study.
Exactly. The famous jam study. More people looked at the jams when there were 24 choices, but way more people bought jam when there were only 6 choices.
Too many options just exhaust the writer.
Completely. It drains that limited self-control. So directing the writer means simplifying. Focus on the vital few actions that make the biggest difference. They talk about laddering down.
Laddering down.
Taking that big abstract change idea and breaking it down step by step into really specific, manageable actions. What does better communication actually look like in tomorrow's meeting?
Okay, find bright spots, script the critical moves. What else? They mentioned something about a destination postcard.
Ah, yes, destination postcards. This is about painting a picture of the future. Not just a goal, but a vivid, compelling description of what success looks like and feels like.
So more than just a target number. More emotional.
Much more. It appeals to both the writer giving a clear endpoint and the elephant showing why the journey is worthwhile emotionally. Think of it like a vision that's both clear and inspiring.
How does that differ from, say, SMART goals? Specific, measurable, achievable.
SMART goals are great for the writer's need for clarity, but they can sometimes be a bit dry. They might not ignite the elephant. A destination postcard aims to do both, provide clarity and emotional resonance.
So you marry that compelling long-term vision with those short-term scripted critical moves.
That's the ideal combo. The writer knows where you're going and what the next step is.
Okay, that feels like a solid plan for directing the writer. Now, what about the elephant? Our emotional powerhouse. How do we get it on board? It sounds like the harder part.
It often is, because you can't just tell the elephant what to do for long. Logic doesn't always cut it. The rider can't just overpower the elephant through sheer force of will, not sustainably anyway.
Right, that leads to the exhaustion we talked about.
Exactly, so you have to
Yeah.
motivate the elephant, engage its emotions. And the Heaths observed a really common pattern in successful changes: see, feel change.
See feel change. Okay, what does that mean?
It means that change often starts not with analysis, but with seeing something that hits you emotionally. You see a problem or you see a compelling solution, it makes you feel something: urgency, hope, empathy, whatever. And then that feeling drives the change in behavior.
So the emotion comes first, then the action. Not analysis, then action.
Often, yes. Especially for getting things moving, analysis might refine the plan later, but the initial spark is frequently emotional. You need to connect with the elephant on its level.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
We're emotional creatures.
Yeah.
How do we do that? How do we create that feeling? They mentioned the positive illusion.
Yeah, that's our tendency to be, well, maybe a little overly optimistic about ourselves and our futures. We can actually leverage that
How?
by focusing on progress, building hope, highlighting successes, even small ones. Taps into that natural optimism and fuels the elephant. It makes the elephant feel like, hey, we can do this.
So lean into positive emotions.
For bigger, broader changes, definitely. Negative emotions like fear or anger can work for quick, specific actions like jumping out of the way of a bus, but for sustained effort on complex problems, you need positive emotions. Hope, pride, compassion, curiosity, they broaden our thinking.
Okay, cultivate positive feelings. But how, practically? Big changes can feel scary or overwhelming for the elephant.
Absolutely. And that's where the strategy of shrinking the change comes in. It's incredibly powerful.
Breaking it down into smaller steps. We hear that advice a lot.
We do, but the Heaths really emphasize why it works for the elephant. A huge, daunting goal makes the elephant want to plant its feet and refuse to budge. It's just too much.
Overwhelm leads to inaction.
Right. But if you break it down into small wins, tiny, achievable steps, the goal suddenly feels less intimidating. And crucially, achieving that first small win generates momentum.
It creates a feeling of progress.
Exactly. It provides tangible proof. Look, we're moving forward. It builds self-efficacy.
Yep.
The elephant starts to believe it can do it. Psychologist Carl Weick had a great take on this.
What did he say?
He said a small win reduces importance, makes it feel less like a huge deal. It reduces demands, makes it clear what needs doing right now, and it raises perceived skill levels, makes you feel more capable.
That combination sounds like pure fuel for the elephant.
It absolutely is. Hope is elephant fuel. And once you get those small wins, you have to celebrate them, make the progress visible.
How do you make it visible?
Well, one tool they borrow from therapy is the miracle scale.
The miracle scale, like the miracle question.
Similar idea. You ask, on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is the miracle, the problem is solved, where are you right now? Even moving from a 2 to a 3 is progress. It makes an abstract goal concrete and shows movement.
I like that. It acknowledges the journey, not just the destination. So, shrink the change, celebrate small wins, make progress visible. What else motivates the elephant? They talked about identity.
Yes, the identity model of decision-making. This is really deep. It suggests that when we face choices, we often ask ourselves subconsciously, who am I? What kind of situation is this? And what does someone like me do here?
So our actions are tied to our sense of self.
Very strongly. If a proposed change aligns with who someone believes they are, or even better, who they aspire to be, the elephant gets excited. It feels authentic.
So you want to frame the change, not just as something beneficial, but as something that resonates with their values or desired identity. Like competent professionals like us do X.
Exactly. Make the elephant want to be the kind of person who embraces this change. It taps into a powerful internal motivator.
Okay, that's compelling. And what about failure? The elephant must hate failing.
Oh, it does. Failure can be incredibly demotivating, which is why it's critical to expect failure en route. Normalize it.
You mean tell people up front that setbacks are likely?
Yes. Frame them not as disasters, but as part of the learning process. This ties into having a growth mindset, believing you can improve through effort. If you expect bumps, you're less likely to give up when you hit one. The elephant is more resilient if it knows mistakes are okay.
Okay, so motivate the elephant. Connect emotionally. See, feel change. Shrink the change into small wins. Make progress visible. Align with identity and build resilience by expecting setbacks. That covers the rider and the elephant. What about the third piece? shaping the path.
Right, shaping the path. This loops back to that first surprise situation. Problems often masquerade as people problems.
Because we commit the fundamental attribution error. We blame character over context.
Precisely. We underestimate how much the environment shapes behavior. Shaping the path is all about consciously tweaking that environment to make the right behaviors easier and the wrong behaviors harder.
So instead of trying to force willpower, you just make the desired action the path of least resistance.
That's the goal. Think about those examples they gave. The nurses wearing special vests when distributing medication.
Right, the vests were a clear visual cue, do not disturb. It changed the situation to reduce interruptions.
And cut medication errors dramatically. Or the sterile cockpit rule in aviation, no non-essential chat during critical phases of flight. Again, changing the environment, the situational rules to improve focus and reduce errors.
It's not about making pilots or nurses fundamentally different people. It's about changing the context they work in.
Exactly. Make the good behavior easier, the risky behavior harder. They also briefly touch on the Haddon matrix.
Oh yeah, for accident prevention.
Right. It's just a way to think systematically about the environment, looking at factors before, during, and after an event to see where you can intervene. But the core idea is simple. Tweak the environment.
And sometimes that tweak can be pretty drastic, like moving. They mentioned a surprising statistic about that.
Yeah, something like 36% of successful changes people made involved moving to a new location.
Wow, a totally new environment removes all the old triggers and cues.
It's a powerful demonstration of how much our surroundings influence our habits. A fresh start can literally reshape the path.
Okay, moving isn't always practical. What are some smaller ways to shape the path? They talked about implementation intentions.
Ah, yes. These are super practical and surprisingly effective. They're simple if-then plans.
Like, if situation X happens, then I will do Y.
Exactly. If it's 3 p.m., then I will take a 10-minute walk. Or, if I feel stressed, then I will take 5 deep breaths.
You pre-decide your response to a specific cue.
And that makes it more automatic. Takes the rider's decision-making out of it in the moment.
Pretty much. Studies show people who set implementation intentions are way more likely to follow through. It automates the behavior by linking it to an environmental trigger.
That's a clever way to tweak your personal path. What about shaping the path for others, like in a team or organization?
Well, a key mindset for a change leader is to focus on designing situations that naturally encourage the right stuff. Assume people want to do well, and create an environment where it's easy for them to do so.
Instead of assuming they're resistant and trying to force them. Right. And one really useful, often underestimated tool for shaping the path is the checklist.
Checklists, seriously, like for groceries.
Well, think bigger. Pilots use them, surgeons use them. Why? Because they tweak the environment by providing clear prompts. They reduce errors caused by memory lapses or overconfidence. They ensure critical steps aren't missed.
Okay, I see. They structure the process, making the right path clearer and harder to deviate from.
Exactly. And one last thing on shaping the path. Don't forget social influence. Rally the herd, as they put it.
Ah, the power of social proof. If we see others doing something, especially when we're unsure,
We're much more likely to do it ourselves. Behavior is contagious, so highlighting early adopters, showing that the change is becoming the norm that shapes the path by leveraging social signals.
okay, wow. Direct the rider, motivate the elephant, shape the path. It's a really comprehensive way to think about change. But is it ever really done? How do you keep it going?
That's such an important question, because change isn't usually a one-time event, right? It's a process. The Heath stress you need to keep the momentum going.
Okay.
First, recognize and really celebrate that first step, that first small win we talked about. Acknowledge the movement. Then, keep reinforcing the new behaviors. Positive reinforcement builds habits.
So catch people doing things right, essentially. Keep fueling the elephant.
Yes. And over time, something interesting happens to the mere exposure principle.
Mere exposure, just being exposed to something, makes us like it more.
Basically, yeah. Familiarity breeds comfort, sometimes even preference. A change that feels awkward at first can start to feel normal, even good, just through repetition and positive association.
And that can actually change how we see ourselves, right? Acting differently leads to thinking differently.
Exactly. As you consistently do the new thing, your identity starts to shift. You begin to see yourself as the kind of person who does this. The behavior reinforces the identity, which reinforces the behavior. It becomes a positive cycle.
So small changes, guided by this framework, really can snowball into big transformations. Successful change tends to follow this pattern.
It really does seem to. Addressing the rational side, the emotional side, and the situation, when you get those working together, you create the conditions for lasting change.
This has been incredibly insightful. So wrapping up, the big message is that making change stick isn't just about gritting your teeth and trying harder.
Not at all. It's about understanding that interplay between our rational writer needing clear directions
Our emotional elephant needing real motivation.
and the path, the environment, needing to be shaped to support the journey.
And the key things to remember are give the writer clarity, find that emotional hook for the elephant, and tweak the path to make things easier.
Absolutely. Clarity, emotion, environment. Address all three.
So a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Think about a change you're trying to make or one you've struggled with. Using this lens, which part needs more attention?
Is your writer lost without clear directions? Is your elephant uninspired or overwhelmed? Or is the path itself working against you, full of friction for the new behavior?
Maybe figuring out one small win could give your elephant the fuel it needs. Or could sketching out that destination postcard give your rider the clarity and pull?
Yeah, just thinking about it through this framework can often unlock the next step. These aren't just theories, they're tools you can use anywhere. Work, health, learning.
Anywhere you want to make a switch.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. We hope these ideas help you navigate change a bit more smoothly.
Yeah, hope it helps make those switches happen. Until next time.